Welcome to the Hired Geek Podcast, where we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell, Community Engagement Lead at Pathify. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Hired Geek Podcast is a proud member of the Enrollify podcast network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow every day. Explore all of our other shows at Enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to another super special episode of the Hired Geek Podcast, another live episode here in sunny San Diego for the ASU+GSV Air Show. If you're following along, this is our final episode that we're recording on site here. Final day, almost towards the end. It's getting a little quieter here on the show floor, but really excited to have somebody here that I feel like I've been bumping into a lot at various events that I've kind of just been just getting connected to and, talking with, and just excited to kind of have the opportunity to talk more about your work and kind of your perspectives on this event and AI and everything else. So if you want to just kick us off briefly, introduce yourself, your background, and Inscribe, and, what that organization does, your team there, and then, what excites you about an event like the Air Show.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. As you say, I do feel like our paths have crossed many times, so it's nice to finally sit down and have this conversation. Also, I would say sunny-ish San Diego.
Yeah, it's cloudy and breezy. It's a little more chilly than I thought.
I was really hoping for tropical weather, but the sun has come out. So I am Katy Kappler. I am co-founder and CEO of Inscribe. We're a virtual community platform, so I'm primarily supporting higher education. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. My origin story is that I was an early employee of a company called eCollege. So some people might recognize that. It was a learning management platform, sort of late 90s, early 2000s is when it had its coming of age. What was really unique about eCollege was it decided to focus on the fully online learning space. So if you were doing online programs at that time, you were probably using us as your technology backbone. And that was pretty unique. And it also meant that, my entry point into this world was to understand upfront the power that technology had to democratize access to education. So there's an entire population of people who never would have had the opportunity for a bachelor's degree had there not been this option made available to them. It also meant I got to work with those students and really understand who they are and appreciate the complexity of the life that they're living in terms of parenting and working, and often first to go to college, returning after a break. So they really are a unique student population. They also happen to be the largest student population in our country, representing, 70 to 75% of our students. So my founding team and I, we kind of grew up in this world together. And one of the things that we noticed was there was a lot of energy going into thinking about how we support these learners from a classroom perspective. How do we recreate instruction? How do we recreate assessment? But not really anything going into thinking about how do we recreate the whole other side of the learning experience, the people that you meet, the support systems that you build, the social capital that you're gaining as part of your education journey. And so when we started Inscribe, we started with that in mind. How do we create a mechanism that would allow these students to have those capabilities and those experiences alongside the education that they're gaining? And so we launched Inscribe. I mentioned it's a virtual community platform, so it provides a digital space where students can connect with their peers, with faculty and staff anytime they want. You might imagine we work with a lot of online students, but also students who are, commuting to school, community colleges, anywhere that you don't have the opportunity to just be immersive on campus for 4 years. And in our spaces, we are always focused on kind of three main goals. Are we improving student sense of belonging and peer connection? Are we actually moving the needle on student success and retention and persistence? And can we do all of this while also helping the institutions that support these students save time and scale their time and resources as well?
Yeah, and it's something that a lot of my ed tech background is in digital education. So I think just when we kind of bumped into each other at an event and just hearing kind of that pitch of what you do, it's just I love that stuff. I feel like it's so important, and just appreciate folks who really commit to working on that, because it is just, I think it's human, it's complex, it's squishy, it's hard, so the idea of, like you said, like, learning management systems, like they are what they are, and they do that well, and I think people have tried to like co-opt them to be the community platform, as like they're never really designed to be that, so it is something that really requires a more like tailor-made solution.
Yes,
stuff. So,
sort of nuanced. Well, and I often say, I think part of why it's been a little late to the party, so to speak, is that for a long time, people assumed that these students did not want, need, or care about this kind of human interaction and peer connection, and that could not be further from the truth. Just because they're learning online doesn't mean they are choosing to like isolate themselves away from everyone else. So it took a little while for people to kind of catch on to that and understand why that's important, but I'm excited to see that it's so much part of the narrative today. Obviously that helps fuel our success, but I'm just happy to see it pervasively in the market that we're working in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess so then to circle it back to like, we're here at this event, like what brings you out to an event like this? Like what excites you about like the idea of this, the inaugural air show, the idea of like AI coming center stage, like what's kind of exciting you? What conversations have you been having? We're at the tail end of this experience.
So it's been a wild ride. Generative AI is not the first AI. It's been around for a long time, but it really accelerated the conversation of how AI can and should impact learning in particular. So it's interesting to be here to see how different companies are approaching it and how they're thinking about it. I have to be honest that even as I immerse myself in trying to understand AI and generative AI, I can't even picture all the possibilities. So I like to be around other people who are thinking about it so I can start to expand my understanding of what's possible and how that might impact me and my company going forward. So lots of energy here, lots of young companies and older companies kind of in the mix, which is fun to see.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad that they're sort of welcoming that kind of perspective. The idea that like I feel like I'm in that sort of same position as well, is that like I guess like I'm kind of have a naivete or something. Like I kind of waited up until now to feel like I'm really trying to fully embrace AI in education, because I think like last year there was just a lot of skepticism or hesitancy or some anxiety, fear. Yeah, like it, or it was people who are just like diving in the deep end right away.
Yeah.
And now we're all sort of calibrating and equalizing. And I think this event is something that helps to facilitate that. Like you said, there's big companies, small companies, and an event like this also has a very wide kind of cross section. And I like being in these spaces every once in a while where it's like, it's K through 12, it's policy, it's nonprofits, it's higher ed, and so I think it's that idea of recognizing that certainly an organization like ASU+GSV is in a good position to try to help shepherd people towards wherever they need to go. Because it could be like, hey, you know what, I see the value, but I don't have any means or tools at my institution to kind of harness that potential of AI, or I'm coming in kind of as a blank slate, like I'm here to learn, and I feel like I'm in that boat. But I guess, certainly, like you said, there's quite a wide array of possibilities and potential when it comes to AI in education. How are you starting to think about how it is impacting your work, or how it may impact your work in sort of the near future? Like, just what's sort of the things that you're sort of thinking about right now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and definitely something we've been thinking about for the past year. So we have a little bit of AI already built into our platform, mostly built around facilitating moderation, so helping keep an eye on what's happening and escalate issues before they get too big. But, we always say Inscribe is human first, technology enabled. And we really want to hold true to that mantra, because one of the things I saw last year that honestly kind of worried me was there was so much excitement about the efficiency that AI and generative AI can bring to the table, and such a rush to replace humans with technology, that we're losing sight of, in some cases, the importance of maintaining that human connection and what it actually could mean long-term for students. So when we think about bringing AI into our product, it's very much about how do we do it in the facilitation of human connection rather than in terms of replacing it. And so I'll give you sort of a tangible example. Our theory of change kind of revolves around two main areas. One is if you can give more equitable access to information and connect students to support more quickly, they're more likely to persist. And if you can help students build peer connection and social capital, therefore have a better sense of belonging, they're more likely to be successful in school and beyond. So we're thinking about how do we bring AI in to facilitate both sides of that. One of them is we are sitting on a vast repository of information for some very practical and tactical questions that get asked in our communities. And it does feel to me like there's an opportunity to leverage AI to help answer those questions more quickly and not necessarily have to rely on a human for that. But a lot of what goes on in our spaces is really about people sharing background, advice, emotion, and we obviously don't want to replace that. But I think there is, right now, I would say that what happens in our platform is very much driven by the users. They're seeking out other people in the product to connect with and that they might have a relationship with. Knowing what we know now about the trends that are happening in these spaces, we can start to use AI around more categorization and summarization and proactively start recommending these connections. So if I know that you're a parent with 2 kids at home and this individual is also a parent talking about the struggles of that, is there a way for us to understand that and bring those 2 people together? If I know that you're returning to school and you're really nervous about it, and here's somebody who's returning to school, but they've actually succeeded and they're getting ready to graduate, can we bring those 2 people together more proactively? So it's very much about expanding the number of loose ties in your network, giving you broader reach, and then enabling you to carry that with you after you graduate.
Yeah, I mean, those are really smart applications, I think. Like, the thing that I think when you're talking about this was sort of applicable here is when you think about social media, and sometimes it's just sort of recommending you people where it's like, you have a bunch of friends in common or something. Like, it's kind of just a very, like, I guess like static in a sense, because it's kind of most often or most noticeably likely pulling from just like one, pool of information that kind of is just like sitting there versus like, analyzing conversations or sentiments or certain keywords or different things and having it be more dynamic. And it could even be like somebody made a post that's a question that hasn't had a response, and they could try to figure out like, kind of tagging in a sense, or like giving a notification of like, hey, this person asked this question, could you help or something, like things like that, where it's just like,
absolutely.
That's like a level of sophistication, because like, there is such a unique magic in any of these sort of like, digital social networks or spaces or whatever, but like, sometimes it's just like, there's a lot of noise or different things, like things can get lost or like you're trying to find your place, and how can we more smartly try to steer you in the right direction to find a place that should be a community that'll be meaningful to you and everything. It's like, it could be, you hear that refrain a lot of like, like, oh, if I only knew about this, early, like a certain student club or like, something that was
Why
going
wasn't
on.
I part of that?
Yeah,
Well,
like an event or something.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think there's sort of 2 populations of students that might not be participating in these spaces. One is the one that doesn't know about it, or why does it matter to me? And then one is the one that's nervous about going in there because they sort of assume that they're not going to find their place. So the other way that technology can overcome that is if you can figure out, what's trending, what are the more common sort of sentiments and conversations that are happening, and then push those out to the people who aren't participating and just show them, like, this is the value of this space. There are people in here who are like you, talking about things that are valuable to you. I very much believe you're going to draw in a more diverse set of voices and a broader set of students to participate. So that's also something, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think broadening that access is also a key element of making it succeed.
Well, because, I think it's like AI could do something to empower humans connecting with one another in like a situation like that, of like doing the analysis of who hasn't logged in a while or has low activity or like all these sort of things that either you can build on the back end, the sort of nudges that could go out to that person, right, and or try to encourage other people who are active to do this, that, or the other thing. So like that idea that like it can kind of elevate this notion of digital social communities and everything that like have been fairly ubiquitous, and like within education is maybe kind of playing more of a catch up, because I think you have that notion of like, well, people just make like a Facebook,
right?
But it's like, well, you have to like opt into that thing, and it's ads and everything. Like there's all these concerns about security, whatever. So I think that like education, like you said, is finally recognizing, there was sort of this like kind of slow drumbeat to it over the past few years, but acknowledging just like the importance of these communities for all students, that online students don't want to be isolated, and that you need to like embrace a sort of tailor-made solution to kind of personalize and kind of create an experience that is like your campus community, in the digital space. Because like they get like my biggest gripe, and I feel like I've said this several times on different podcasts, is that idea of like, Like, well, we have the LMS. That's like where students spend all their time. And it's like, yeah, but it's not built to do that. Like, you have to like do
not
more
a
than
Swiss
that, do
Army
better.
knife. No, I know. You got to create safe spaces, inclusive spaces that feel natural and authentic for the students. And that's not really a LMS classroom.
Right. Because it's like,
For this purpose.
well, yeah, and I think it's even the idea of like, you would hope that you have something that either, integrates with that in some fashion or whatever, or just like, you build it to be dynamic and engaging enough to where, the notion of like, oh, I do have to go to another place, but it's because it like has a deep and robust feature set, like the idea of like, I've seen that some institutions do stuff where around like, Slack or Discord and all that, and kind of pull those in, some fashion or another, maybe to like an LMS, but like, that's like one step in the right direction. But it is just kind of like, it's a chat log, like that's all it is. Like it's not something that like, can do everything, but that can be part of the solution. And I hope if institutions are utilizing something like that already and seeing the value, it's like, well, sort of continuous improvement. Let's like kind of keep moving to build that sort of digital ecosystem out, and I do really appreciate that. Yeah, so we will wrap up though, because I feel like we're getting to like good place here to kind of wrap all this up with a nice bow. Kind of synthesize the advice that you would give to other higher ed leaders right now. Certainly we're talking a lot about digital community for students and everything. So if it's more so on that, AI, all the above, just advice at this moment in time that you want to give to other higher ed leaders.
Okay, I have two pieces of advice, one on each side. So one is try not to be afraid and go out and use the tools that are available from like an AI perspective. I think it's hard to understand both the power and the value unless you're using them yourself. So really like commit to going out and trying these things, and it'll give you a much better perspective of how they could be brought into the classroom and the learning experience. So don't be afraid. And the other thing I will say is listen to your students. Like whenever possible, bring your students into the conversation. So whether that's about how AI is going to be used or what kind of community you want to build on campus or something else, I think a lot of times, and ed tech is also, frankly, guilty of this. We don't often bring the student voice into that conversation. So I've learned more from talking to the students that use our product than I have from anything else. And they are filled with wonderful ideas and passion for this work. And so, bring them in, give them a seat at the table, and you'll see what can happen.
I appreciate the all-inclusive call out there. That is applicable advice to institutional leaders and also ed tech leaders. Like all of us all together, we can always, it's a helpful reminder. And I'll say, if folks have been following along with these live episodes, we had Don from Calabre College in California, and they're a new institution of really bringing in, like I was saying to him, it felt like I was talking to somebody from like an ed tech company, but it is an institution, but like they, have this really clear kind of vision around their product, their institution, their educational offerings and everything, but like that great way that they framed it was, we're not trying to validate, we're doing discovery.
Yeah.
Because it could be like,
Great point.
You've gone miles down the road and be like, this is a cool thing that we like, prototyped or whatever, and just be like, do you like this? And
Right.
it might be like, well, maybe yes, no, there's like, I like this or don't like that, whatever. But like, it could be that idea of like, we want to create a stronger sense of community in digital spaces with our students. How would you see like, and like that's where you start, and then maybe circle back to validate a thing that was based from the get-go on that student feedback. But I think applicable across the board for sure. And I think just it's been helpful, to hear these sort of sentiments and this sort of like measured approach, the very I think just balanced perspective around like AI and just all those sort of things. I feel like that's kind of where I feel like my head's at or where I'm going, and I think just really exciting to see all the things coming out of the Air Show here. And thanks for folks if you've been following along with all these live episodes, and thank you to everybody that's jumped on to hang out with me here. Thank you to you, Katy, for sharing all of your insights and everything, and for the great work that you and your team do, and have ways to connect with you and Inscribe in the description for the episode. But good to see you as always.
Absolutely. Good to see you. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances you'll like all the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Day Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.